Euronews reports at around 6:30 p.m. local time, the Election Commission reported a voter turnout of just over 77%, setting a new record in Hungarian election history. And 2 days before that election, Donald Trump desperately debased the presidency by trying to buy votes for Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban by posting this on social media. My administration stands ready to use the full economic might of the United States to strengthen Hungary's economy, as we have done for our great allies in the past. If Prime Minister Viktor Orban and the Hungarian people ever need it, we are excited to invest in the future prosperity that will be generated by Orban's continued leadership! And last week, Donald Trump's vice president, James David Vance, disgraced the vice presidency by campaigning with Viktor Orban, who has maintained close ties to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. On Sunday, Donald Trump's candidate went down in a crushing defeat, with the new prime minister winning on an anti-corruption campaign. Joining us now is Timothy Snyder, professor of history at the University of Toronto. He's also the author of the New York Times bestsellers On Freedom and On Tyranny. Professor Snyder, your reading of what we saw in this election?
Well, it's an election about Hungarian domestic politics. And on the one side, we have an economy which is in decline. On the other side, we have a resistance movement which is able to link economic questions, people's experience of everyday life, with the thoroughgoing grift and corruption of the Orban administration. So those two factors, a declining economic situation, plus a movement which worked hard for 2 years to connect scandals at the top with people's everyday life. That's Hungary from within. And that's why what we do as Americans, shameful though it is, didn't really matter. However, for us, at least for those of us who, like the vice president and the president, are members of an international far-right network, this election has a meaning that goes far beyond Hungary. Orban, for the better part of 2 decades, has been a central ideological and financial node of a network that supports American think tanks, American right-wing organizations, American candidates for office. Orban has been the teacher. People like Trump and Vance have been the pupils. And so in losing Orban, they suffer something quite serious. They lose the person who instructed them, who funded them, who helped them, who set an example for them. Orban's fall also shows that they can fall as well. So if you're in the center or on the left, you probably don't think much about Orban. But if you're on the American far right, you probably do. Because the American far right, ironically, is far more cosmopolitan, far more international than other parts of the American political spectrum. And Orban was the sun around which all of that dependency and international connections orbited.
What is the lesson for the resistance to Trumpism here in the United States?
That's a wonderful question. First of all, that you have to do the work over a long period of time. We're covering this as a big story, and it is a big story. This is one of the biggest elections of the century. But the reason we have this big story is because the work of not just an opposition leader, Petr Magyar, but also the work of thousands of organizers over 2 years. So you have to do the work. The second lesson is you have to connect the scandals to people's everyday life. You can't just say democracy. You can't just say affordability. You have to explain to people how an authoritarian regime leads to corruption and leads you to have poor prospects for yourself and for your children. The most fundamental lesson of all this, though, is that these guys can be beaten, and they can be beaten badly. Orban was at the center, somewhere between Trump and Putin. He is the one who pioneered a system where where the elections are unfair, where it's all uphill, where the media is too tilted towards the government. He did all of that, and nevertheless, he got absolutely walloped in an unfair election. He got walloped in an election which was rigged in his direction. This is the fundamental lesson, that it can be done, that you can win, and in fact, you can win big. And I would add one more point. One thing that Paramaggiore has been very good at talking about is when we get to the other side, the folks who were corrupt, the folks who broke the law, those people are going to see justice. I think that's a point which Democrats or people around them would also be well advised to make, that we will eventually come back to a situation where there will not be crime without punishment, that if you're going to break the law now, if you're going to exploit the American people now, there may be consequences for you down the line.
Professor Timothy Snyder, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Very glad.